New at 6, what started as a simple request for records has turned into the silent treatment from City Hall in Chicago.
Yeah, 3 separate city agencies have so far refused to turn over records to NBC5 Investigates, detailing who's requested permits to protest during the Democratic National Convention. Here's investigative reporter Bennett Haeberle.
This is a story we didn't think we'd have to tell you. We wanted to know which groups had sought permits to protest or march during the Democratic National Convention. We filed Freedom of Information Act requests with the city, but so far they've either been delayed, ignored, or flatly denied. In less than 2 months, the Democratic National Convention will draw tens of thousands to Chicago, many of whom plan to march in the streets. But figuring out exactly who they are and where they plan to be has been somewhat challenging. After we requested copies of applications and the permits granted, the Chicago Park District asked for additional time. The Chicago Department of Transportation has so far ignored our requests. And the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events denied our records requests, saying in an email that the permits have not yet been issued, and therefore any permit applications are considered preliminary or pending. The agency cited an exemption in the state's public records laws, stating that the documents can be withheld.
That claim is absurd. The exemption they're relying on applies to their own deliberations about, for example, that application. It doesn't apply to the application itself. This is incredibly obvious under the statute and case law, and no properly trained FOIA officer should be asserting that exemption.
Matt Topic is an attorney with Lovey & Lovey. His firm represents private citizens and news outlets, including NBC5 Investigates, and he has sued city agencies when requests for public records have been denied.
I've seen all kinds of violations from the city and other public bodies around the state. This is one of the most ridiculous ones I have ever seen. I wish I could say that it shocks me, but public bodies, especially in the city of Chicago, have a pretty bad history.
While there are some documents that can be withheld, Topic says permit applications shouldn't be one of them.
The statute allows government officials to deliberate about something without those deliberations being made public in most instances. It does not allow them to withhold the thing that they are deliberating about, which here is an application submitted by a third party.
So in short, we should have those records.
You absolutely should have those records.
We do have some idea of who might protest and that it could include thousands of demonstrators. The only reason we know that, though, is because those groups have sued the city after their permit applications were denied. Included in those court filings are copies of their permit applications and the denials from the city, which raise concerns that their requests to protests were duplicative and that their demonstrations would require too many additional officers to provide necessary security. Those groups have been in court as recently as this week, still waging their fight against the DNC's host city, hinting that thousands could show up in Chicago even without a permit.
This is why we are fighting in court and on the streets for a permit, and why, at the same time, we will continue to say we are protesting the DNC with or without permits.
In Chicago, Bennett Haeberle, NBC5 Investigates.
Thank you to Bennett.